Hi, everyone. Welcome to Simulation Pulse Live, Friday, May 24th. And Rick was just mentioning that it's the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, so we're probably going to be alone here today.
That's okay. That's when we do our craziest stuff, right?
I think we
That's
can deal
right.
with that.
Johnny's here. We got Johnny in the house.
Hey, we got one.
I'm gonna
Hey,
make Johnny
John.
a panelist. Johnny probably is just like, I just want to lurk, um, but I'm bringing him in. You can still lurk, Johnny. No pressure. You don't have to turn your camera on or talk or anything, but if you want to, you're welcome to.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
right.
thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And John, we have a kind of a loose agenda that we were going to follow, but if there's something you specifically are interested in or want to know, please don't hesitate to call it out because we'll switch gears real fast.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Well, I think, I had sent a message to the earlier today saying that one of the things that I thought would be great to talk about is all the customization options that we have with Acadicus, right? I mean, I am fortunate enough to get to work with a large number of our customers, and without a doubt, one of the first things that happen when you get in there with subject matter expert or a nursing program or respiratory therapist is no matter what efforts we've went through to try to put these scenes together in a very specific manner for a very specific purpose, right? Somebody wants to change something or enhance something or add this or take that out. Unfortunately, within Acadicus, we're able to do that, on the fly pretty quickly. And so I thought we would spend a little bit of time talking about how we do that and how our customers can do that and kind of give a few examples of that. And so I thought John or Bill, we could go into one of the labs. I'll put my headset on, right? I'll leave my camera on so you can see how silly I am. But I'll go in VR and you can share your screen in non-VR mode. Because one of the other things that I've started to get a lot of questions about is about non-VR mode, right? A lot of teaching is still done remotely. And there's still a lot of organizations that haven't built up a library of headsets. And so there's still a lot of questions about, well, how do I get and leverage these platforms with students I don't have headsets for or aren't on site or, kind of can't participate necessarily, or maybe they don't feel comfortable putting one on. And I think we'll be able to demonstrate that real easily today. Here we are on a Zoom call. John's going to be able to go into the same lab I am. I'll be in a headset. John won't be in a headset, and then he'll share his screen out. So John and Sean, who's a guest here, and Bill will all be able to see what John sees. And so we'll have the best of all the worlds, right? We'll have VR mode going, we'll have non-VR mode going, and we'll have remote display going, kind of all at the same time. So does that sound like a plan, group?
It sounds
Yeah.
great.
And we have Deanna joining us.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
Deanna.
Hi,
Yeah. And Rick, even speaking of non-VR mode, it actually solved one of the problems for us that we ran into with VR and doing our nursing simulations is that, documentation, right? So how do I make it so I can write things down? And at first I thought, we'll put a big whiteboard in the room. And I made a whiteboard out of out of one of the image viewers, and then put the drawing tools in there, and that was pretty good. I mean, it worked out all right. But then we kind of switched a little bit and went, well, what if someone was in non-VR mode, right? And like, what if someone was in non-VR mode? What if one of the nursing students was in non-VR mode while, say, the other two or three are in VR and they're working? And, we just show that student how to get around, and then they can even open their electronic health record. So they sit at my station where I have two monitors. They can open their electronic health record and they can be documenting while we're actually, while they're actually working. And that worked out really well. And the initial concern was, well, is that student going to feel like they're not part of the simulation and all that? And no, actually, it turned out to be sort of the opposite. they felt like they were getting sort of a high angle view of things.
Mhm.
And it worked out really well, I think. It was extremely effective. And as an instructor, I rarely go into VR while the students are doing VR.
Mhm.
I don't. I do all of my work from non-VR mode. And the only time that I'll go into VR is I have to, there are certain things I want to be visible and invisible. And, they don't get a 12 lead until they ask for the 12 lead. So I have to make that visible. So that's the
Mhm.
only really the only time that I will get into VR if I have to do that. Otherwise, everything's non-VR mode for me.
Mhm.
That's a
Mhm.
really good point,
And
Bill. And I think that's one thing we
yeah.
run into a lot is where instructors feel like this is a VR platform and they're going to have to learn a bunch of VR stuff and they're going to be in the headset and they don't know how to do it before they've tried it a while back and they're not, but I always like to reiterate that this is extremely simple. This can be simpler than running a mannequin-based simulation, depending on how you set it up. Where, if you've got the support to make sure your computers are connected and everything is ready, the instructor should be able to come in and just open up the simulation manager and run the simulation just like you would in any other modality. There should really be nothing else to it. So I think that's the goal, at least to get to that point.
I had an instructor who had never touched Acadicus before, had never touched Acadicus, had never even been in VR, sitting next to me while we were doing a simulation with the nursing students. And I said, here, you want to try this real quick? Like, you want to run this? And she's like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, I think you can. And so she just kind of went, all right, well, and she took the mouse and was like, oh, yeah, okay, well, if they gave that medication, his blood pressure would change a little bit. Here, let's change that real quick. And it was just that quick because it's what we understand for simulation manager. It's pretty much the same. And then, of course, with the sequencer, I'm like, if you know how to operate a mouse, you know how to run this simulation. All you have to do is click to go to the next sequence. Like, that's it. All of this stuff is preset for you. And she was like, oh, that's really great. I mean, that's awesome. Do they have that for this particular simulation? And I said, well, I see more and more of this coming. So, just wait. But yeah, definitely, So, and it was just, like it was the birthing mannequin. We were talking about the birthing mannequin, and she's like, wow, you just hit the next sequence. And I can do it when I'm ready for it. I was like, yeah, that's it, And you can still change it on the fly. Yeah, you can still change it on the fly. So if they did something and I wanted to change it, you could do that. So yeah, it was really neat. Never touched it before and was running it. So
Wow, that's awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm in and I see you in the room, John.
All right, I just shared my screen.
And let's see. I think I'll need to mute
you here.
Yeah, you're gonna need to mute
I'm
your
muted,
mic there,
yeah.
Rick.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, great. And John, are you sharing your screen?
I
on
am,
the Zoom?
yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so what I'm going to do is actually start by taking us into some of our standard content that we have here. And we'll start with one of the ones it's kind of the one I start with most of our training and teaching, and that is our hazard ID room. It's a great starting point for typically most of the organizations, the instructors, as well as the students, because it's fairly basic, fairly simple. But what I want you to do is be able to actually see the space. And oh, Bill's coming in also. And
Yeah, I
John's
figured
in.
why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as John pans around slowly, and this is another little quick lesson, because if you were watching through my view, you'd have to get all my, head movements and tilts, and, people can get dizzy actually just watching somebody in a headset. But if you're in non-VR mode, you get a much smoother view as somebody's moving around. And you can see from John's view, if he pans around a little bit, that it's a pretty kind of plain hospital-like hallway. Nothing much to it. Actually, really nothing in this hallway at all. And if we go into the room, you get a sense of what's in here.
Now you're
And-
seeing, so y'all that are watching, they're at home, what you're seeing is, from John's point of view, that's my avatar right there. And that's what I look like when I'm in this Bill Ballo one, is what I look like when I'm in non-VR, right? So when I'm in just viewer mode. Now the other thing that I do when it's time to do the simulation is I put myself into ghost mode, and that's going to happen right now.
Oof,
Bill's
there he
gone.
goes.
And then I'm in ghost mode, and my students aren't seeing me. I'm still in the scene. I assure you, I'm exactly where I was. I'll turn that back on. I'm exactly where I was, and I get to be in the scene with the student, and no one can see me. And they can still hear
this
me.
question, yeah, this issue comes up a lot too when people ask about doing the soft skill stuff, right? So, the question comes up frequently. Well, how do we get the character that we have over here in the bed, Miles, to interact with the student? Well, ideally, right, if Bill was in here and he went into ghost mode, Bill could be up there voicing through Miles, and the student would never know otherwise that it wasn't Bill in the room, right? It would seem like it's coming from Miles.
Let's just do a
Bill
little
can talk to
role
Miles.
play there. Hey, hi, Miles Johnson. How are you doing today?
Oh, well, I've definitely had better days. There's no doubt about that.
It looks like we have some hazards here in the room. This doesn't look very safe. Do you mind if Rick and I work together to clean this up?
Well, I guess. Oh, you know what? There's also a voicing for Miles in this one. I forgot to mention that. There's voicing for Miles. So I don't even necessarily have to do the voice.
What do you want?
Mhm.
I can use it.
What is that? Who are you? Do what you have to do.
Right? So generally, I act as the patient. It's just one of the things I like to do. But this one, you actually have voicings in here that you can you can play around with. And I'll show you also where I am right now, because you can't see me. So I was over there by the TV, or where the TV was, and now when I turn my ghost mode off, you can see I'm actually standing right next to Miles now. There I am right there, standing right next to Miles. And so I'm acting as Miles, and the sound is coming from Miles. So I just pop myself back into viewer mode, and then my students can act as students, I can act as the patient, or I can use the sim manager.
And really, this is built around, the best practices in simulation that we really studied when we started building Acadicus. We talked to people that run simulation centers all over the country and really, looked at this modality because it's so effective. That mannequin-based simulation has been proven over decades. There's, tons of research and published evidence about the efficacy of it. And we saw it as a valuable thing to extend this into a virtual dimension, not trying to replace it, but instead to try to introduce all the new capabilities of this virtual world without replacing that modality. We're respecting the existing craft of simulation and bringing that into the virtual world. So, if you go into a mannequin-based simulation lab, you're going to see a plastic mannequin, and you're going to see probably a mirrored glass, and there's a facilitator that's voicing the patient, or somebody that's otherwise playing that role, and we're just bringing that into the virtual world. So again, we're trying to make it familiar. This is something that already happens in simulation. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to take a right angle and do something completely different. And so there's a lot of course, new opportunities for AI patient integrations and things like that we're looking at. But these are very early days in AI, and right now we're being very cautious about how we roll that out in terms of the safety of student interaction. So there's more to come in the way of patient voicing, but right now this modality is what is already has been used for decades in simulation.
Yeah,
What I want to do.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
Rick.
Yep,
Okay.
that's okay.
So one of the other sort of interesting things too is, and you can't necessarily see this on my end, but if I go into ghost mode, I also have the ability to then go into ghost mute. Now, what's really nice about that, let's say John and I were running a simulation. John's at his house there. He's about 15 minutes away from me, but he's over there in at his house, and I'm at my house, and we're running a simulation. Or let's say I'm at campus A and John is at campus B, and I want John to be the John is the expert when it comes to OB, and so I want John to be there, and I want him to be the person watching, right? I'm the operator, but I want him to be that instructor that's getting to watch and then eventually is going to do the debrief with the students. Well, if I put ghost mute on, then anyone that's in ghost mode can talk to each other without the people that are not in ghost mode hearing it. So it's just like we do, and this is how much this is recreated what we do in SimLab. It's like us standing on the other side of that wall, and we're standing together, but we could be miles apart. You know, John could be up at Reedsburg, and I can be here in Madison, and we could be miles and miles apart, or we could have another instructor who's all the way around the world. It doesn't matter. That person can still come in. They can go into ghost mode with me. They can go, using ghost mute. We can speak to each other instead of speaking and then the students hear us. So that adds just another sort of layer to it in terms of capabilities. So sorry, Rick, I cut you off.
No. I appreciate it, Bill. All these are these fine little touches that most people don't really kind of learn or hear about until you get into a more advanced state. And sometimes never at all, right? Because they kind of stop at the simple stuff. But John, if I could, I want to go back out into the hallway one more time before I change this scene, because I want to remind everybody what we're looking at here before I show them how we customized it with one of our clients. So again, not much to look at here. And usually most organizations will use this as the pre-brief with their students before they go into the room. So again, you can use this out of the box as it is, or let's see what Nicolay did with the hazard room.
Now, the other key here is because we're all in the same room together, when Rick changes that room, we all go with him. So it's like, we're all partners in this. So.
Even though we're not physically in the same space, we're hundreds of
Right.
miles apart collectively, but very much feels like we're in the same little world here.
So this is that very same scene that they took and copied and added some of their particular content, right? So they wanted to make a few changes to the medical record we have out here in the hallway. You'll come to understand that in a minute. But what I'll call out here is they added a section down here about IV fluids. And then down here, they added a fall risk assessment scale that they teach in their class, right? So they cover that with the students in the hallway. And then over on the other wall, you'll look there quickly, John. This is a little video that they have their students watch. I'll play just a few seconds.
I've been married 39 years and I raised 3 kids. I'm sure I'll survive a 2-night hospital stay without a fall.
Well, I'm sure you'll be fine, but nonetheless, thousands of patients do fall each year and get hurt. To make sure this doesn't happen to you, please stay in bed. The pain medication that you're on could make you drowsy.
Right, so, and I just want to call out again, these are documents that they were able to bring in and customize this scene with a video, this content here, this graph, this medical record element. They have another video down here that they watch, and then one more room checklist that they teach their students. All of these things were brought in, they did some customization of the space with their branding, and also kind of block the students in, because sometimes what happens when the students get in here, Bill, you can probably vouch for this, right? They started wanting to go exploring, and they kind of disappear around the corners of the hallway. So
I've had students get down to the end of the hall and go, okay, wait, where am I supposed to go now? And the other thing too is you notice that behind Rick there, the Nicolet College badge, it changed to that picture. I did that, so I'm doing that from non VR mode. I'm doing that from viewer mode. So there are still some functions that I have in viewer mode where I can actually be part of things. One of the students that was one of the nursing students who was in non VR mode took care of like putting the blood pressure cuff on the patient and putting the SpO2 on the patient, and then the patient needed a mask, so they were like, okay, I'll put the non-rebreather on, and so they were still able to have some functionality, not all of the functionality that you have in terms of virtual reality, but they were still able to have some functionality within that. For example, at the door over here. So if I wanted to open up the door that's over to our left here, right, I can just hit that button, and now I've opened that door. And again, this is something that I can do then from non-VR mode. So I do still have some functionality, even within the scene itself, not necessarily related to the simulation manager.
Then I'll call out a couple of other changes that Nicolet made here in this scene. Is, if you remember, there was a spill over here on this side of the bed. Well, they felt it made more sense to have the spill in the bathroom. So if you look now in the bathroom, right, that's quickly just moved from there to there.
That's a good point.
Also, students would always go into the bathroom looking for some issue and find. So we thought that was useful.
I think I'm going to change my hazard ID.
Right?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like it. That's perfect.
And
I mean, I'm even thinking like the bedpan, right? Like the bedpan could even be, man. And that's what happens, y'all. We start thinking about all the possibilities.
Yeah. And you can see we added another panel in here that made this just a little bit easier to read, and also called out one of the little gotchas in this scene is the patient's allergy to strawberries. And if you look over here on the tray, Jon goes over there, you can see that on his meal tray, right, poor Miles was delivered strawberries. This is one of the things we're hoping to have the students pick up on, and called that out by kind of increasing the size of this the screen a little bit. One of the other things they did here, because this was primarily a nursing program, they thought nurses should be able to pick this up, is that on the orders, this gave Miles oxygen, right? And if you'll notice over now, there's an oxygen flow meter. We added that to the room. That's on 0 liters per minute. And Miles has a cannula sitting on his lap. It's not on his face. So these were things that they wanted the students to find. And then I think I'd mentioned out in the hallway, we saw that Miles has an IV in. That here is set to 40 and out in the hallway was set to 75 was the order. So this was just a couple of things that they decided to add that really made it right for them. And, that's what I just really like to call out to all of the folks in the Acadicus community, is that, you can take these things that we provide you and use them kind of out of the box. And
By the
loads
way,
of
I corrected his
documentation.
IV flow rate.
Is that
I corrected his IV flow rate there. So.
via non-VR mode, right, Bill?
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
you can see I'm doing it here on the one on the right too. When I hit that, you can see now it changes, and I'm setting it 39. There's 70, and then I can set that change, and that's me doing that in non-VR mode there.
Yep. It also
And I can
gave
even
us a
clean up
little
some of these
story
lines.
about how the blood got on the floor from Miles's IV insertion,
Oh, that makes more sense.
right?
Oh, I got to make some changes to the hazard ID.
So yeah, and again, none of this was, I want to say, rocket sciences. All of this is no code. It's really just kind of coming up with, what do I want to do in here? And bring those images and those documents in, the videos. grabbing the IV pole and the O2 flow meter out of our library, and boom, you save it, and you've got a whole new experience here ready to go that specifically met Nicolet's requirements.
Yeah, that's really great. The spill in the bathroom just makes so much more sense. Like, yeah.
Really simple
And then-
thing.
And then I did wonder how the blood got on the floor in the other hazard ID. I'm like, now how did the blood get on the floor and it didn't get noticed? Is Miles bleeding somewhere? And I actually had one of the students go, is he bleeding from somewhere? The
Right.
IV. So now
The
I'm going to put
IV.
an IV pole in there. So
Yeah.
that's great.
You would have probably put Miles on an anticoagulant, Bill. That would even make it
Yeah.
better, right?
Well, yeah, and I can make this change in like 5-10 minutes. I mean, it won't take me long at all. I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna grab the spill that's on the floor, and just take it and move it into the bathroom, and then I'm gonna grab an IV pole out of the library and stick it in there. It takes like 5, maybe 10 minutes, all total, for me to do and just get it right where I want it. So.
Yep. And how about we visit another customization?
Sounds good.
All right. We're going to go to our standard head-to-toe assessment scene. I'm going to load that right now.
Interesting. I don't think I've seen the double doors.
Yeah, I think this one is relatively new.
Hmm.
There's John popping in. And again, you can see kind of land in this nondescript hallway. And I love this because this becomes kind of a learning center, right? The pre-brief area, the let's review what we're going to do before we go into the patient space. And then from here, obviously, we can open up and go in. And here's my favorite patient in all of Acadicus, darling Millie. I love Millie. Millie's my favorite gal because I tend to just use Millie a lot. But again, you can see we've come in, Millie's in her bed. We have some of our equipment. I think John's kind of looking at some of that now that you would use when doing a typical head-to-toe assessment on a patient. And again, we have documentation all around how this was set up and why it was set up and how you walk through the process of doing the head-to-toe assessment here in Acadicus. But, right, as is typical, I get in here with one of our clients, and this is what we ended up with that they're going to be using in their class. So I'm going to reload us now.
Oh, I was putting all the vital signs stuff.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
You'll be able to come back.
Now I
We're gonna
know.
be
Now
great.
I know how my students feel when I'm like, okay, we're gonna switch scenes.
So now here we are. Again, hey, Bill, before you come back in the
Oh, yeah.
hallway a minute.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Again, we've got some material out in the hallway that we
Oh,
added.
yeah. I should be paying attention.
And so now what our instructor here at South College does is we have a 12-slide presentation we go over with our students. That is their head-to-toe assessment checklist. Again, this is something they use in their standard class that's now available to go over with their students. And as you had demonstrated before, Bill, right, you can actually control this.
Okay.
And actually use this kind of like a PowerPoint presentation. And so they can sit out here and kind of go over all this content, all this material to refresh the student or students prior to going into doing the assessment. And I believe there's maybe 10 or 12 slides that they have here that they use and can review here prior to going in.
And I just hit the arrow, but well, for some reason that's not working for me.
It's not advancing for you, Bill?
Not for me, unless I need
Oh,
to
I'm
do it out of the
seeing it
simulation
move.
manager.
I'm seeing it move.
You are. I'm not seeing it in viewer mode. That's weird.
Ah, okay.
That's different. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
know
not
why.
seeing it either. I don't, I feel like these images might not be networked somehow.
Oh, that makes sense because the image is on their computer.
Yeah.
Or Rick probably on yours as well. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if I upload an image from my computer, it's sort of the same thing. So if I upload an image from my computer, well, no, I don't know.
No, I mean, once I bring it in here, my understanding was that it's available to everybody to see. I think Sean's
Yeah.
on, he might give it a comment.
I just changed one of the images, the image I'm looking at. I just added it. I do see the images are in the lab,
Now
but
I
they
see
just
it.
haven't been assigned, at least on our side, to the simulation manager.
Yep.
So you see
Okay.
the image that I put on there?
Mhm.
Now I see it. It was just that, yeah, I saw it, John.
Yeah.
It was just the image hadn't been assigned to it. Got it.
And so we can like select these. Once they're imported into the folder, we can play that.
Yeah, okay. Now I see.
It could be that
Yeah,
the images
now I can
were
advance it.
deleted at one point, and then so if it can't find it, just displays that default Acadicus logo.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, that
We need to re-upload those images.
Looks
Or
they're
just
uploaded, they're
reassign
just not
them.
assigned. 'Cause
they're
it
in there.
looks
They
like
just
the
didn't get
assigned ones
assigned.
might have been deleted, the ones that were previously assigned.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I do see scenes. Now, talk to me real quick about this image displayer because this is something that has been requested by my nursing faculty to have information that they can kind of flip through, right? So like on the wow and that kind of thing. Is this a special image viewer? Is there something specific that I'm looking for in the library? Is there a specific name for it or something like that?
It's in the display
No, I mean, there's
utilities
just,
pack.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, go ahead, Sean.
It's just
And I
saying
see
that
it.
it's in the displays, display utilities.
Got it. I see it labeled in here as image displayer slideshow. Does that seem right?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, and now
So
I
it's
can
kind of-
see too where I can put all of the different images in there. Because you've got like 1 of 50 in this display. Okay, that's really great actually. That's extremely helpful.
Oh yeah, this is really powerful. I mean, this was one I know I was requesting last year that Sean was able to provide, and it's been used a lot since it's become available. Because to your point, Bill, right, we're all kind of, trained over, several decades now about PowerPoint and Google Slides. And so we're very used to that. And there's a lot of content that already exists out there in that format.
Yeah.
And so people have a level of comfort with teaching in this modality.
Yeah.
And so being able to do this, just makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to add to, like the Madison College, the digital twin, we have that amphitheater out back.
Yes.
Kind of adds to that and allows me then, when I'm doing demos now, I'm going to use that area,
Mhm.
and then I can have little slides that I flip through there as well, which is pretty amazing.
Yep, that's awesome. All right, now we can slide into the room with Millie, and you'll
Yeah.
notice a couple of other changes in here.
Oh yeah. Millie, you've got oxygen on, which is pretty good. She's also sitting back a little bit more.
Yes, one of the things that the instructor at South asked is that we allow the students to be able to, adjust Millie's position and, whether she had blanket on or off. And so we added the board in here. We have this board in our library that connects to Millie and to the bed that allows the participant or the student to actually do things so that the instructor doesn't have to be manipulating in Sim Manager all the time.
Gotcha.
So if the student says, hey, yeah, I'm going to put the bed rails down or put the bed rails up, they can do so right here with this interactive panel.
Millie, I'm going to listen to your lungs real quickly here.
And what we can do to help with that, Bill, is again, over here on the panel, we can uncover Millie's tops.
Oh, yeah.
And
it looks like her blood pressure is 151/92. Let's listen to some bowel sounds.
Did I hear some crackles?
That's her bowel sounds.
Oh, you're on there. Okay.
That sounds pretty normal. Let's hear some heart tones. Okay. Good. Lub dub, no AFib. That's good. I can put that back. Millie, I'm going to take your temperature.
You're manipulating these tools with in non-VR mode with your mouse.
I am. And Millie, I'm taking your temperature there. All right, looks good, 98. Awesome. I can look at her eyes too. So I can take
we added the pen light, which wasn't in there previously.
And place that pen light. And put that and look at her eyes, yeah. And then I can always put it back too. Well, that one I can't. Because I picked it up and put it somewhere where I shouldn't. There we go. Yeah.
So
oops, sorry.
Just these kind of minor little changes that really made the difference for that particular client and made this really, really useful for them.
Lower your bed rails there, Millie, because I think they're going to come in and do an IV here.
And we can take that off because
that's
we
good.
also wanted to be able to check for edema.
Yeah, let's see. Do we have any edema here? I don't see any.
Yep.
So you see how, even I as the non-VR participant, it's not like they're not part of it. They're doing it in a 2D mode, but they're able to manipulate things in that 3D space. Now, I can't manipulate everything in that 3D space, but I can manipulate a heck of a lot of stuff in that 3D space and still get some good experience out of it with the other nurses that are participating within the headset.
Okay.
Millie, I think we've bothered you enough. Poor Millie, we've taken off her blanket and sat her up, and I've been staring in her eyes, all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay. Well, those were the two examples that I had wanted to demonstrate today. Just to really call out again how you can take any of our, and in fact, you could start with this room from scratch even, if you wanted to build something yourself, and then add the content from there.
Well, and I have Millie, I use Millie in one of my scenes, so in a different scene. So this is the same scene that our birthing mannequin is in. And we have Millie in more of an emergency style room. And she has a stroke. And so I have her with left-sided facial droop. And then, the person that's acting as her slurs their speech a little bit. And then, the students have to do a stroke exam and see if her arms will raise and will they fall at a similar rate, those kind of things. Does she have arm drift? Those things. So Millie's a mannequin to me. I just think of Millie as a mannequin like any other mannequin. And, today Millie is having a stroke and tomorrow Millie is, having congestive heart failure. And then the next day, Millie's got asthma or something like that. So, you can kind of, because you can control so much with the sim manager, you can kind of choose what you want Millie to look like from day to day, or, hour to hour, you know? I mean, if I had one set of students coming in and doing an assessment on her for congestive heart failure, and then the next set's going to come in and do an assessment on her for stroke, I can change her very quickly from congestive heart failure to stroke. So it's kind of up to me what I want those parameters to be.
Mhm. All right, I'll have us visit one more area. This is one that I built from scratch as a kind of a example for one of our clients to look at. So let's jump there.
Ooh, nice.
So this is a classroom, right? This is not your typical clinical experience, but what you might call a learning experience. And in this particular case, the client wanted to train their medics. Bill, this will resonate with you, and refresh them on aspects of treating burn patients in the field. And so we've got kind of 3 stations. You've got one that goes over rule of nines, one that goes over depth of burn, and then one that goes over escaratum. And kind of heavily makes use of our recording feature and function. And so there's a little lecture that goes with each one, that kind of goes over the particular points.
Hi, at this station, we're going to be talking about the rule of nines. Now, the rule of nines functions as a tool to assess second degree and third degree total body surface area.
I won't play that very. One of the things you can't see here, that if you were in VR mode and in edit mode, is that all of these lectures that I'm giving, I actually have a image viewer here, a panel with a script on it that I'm reading. So I think there's a lot of fear that you have to get in here and kind of extemporaneously know all this stuff off the top of your head. But you can bring content in that the students don't see that you're able to use. And so those panels are actually still in this room. We don't see them. We kind of don't run into them. But they were the scripts I used to record this content.
And Rick, how did you do that? Like, how did you bring up an image and then, make it so that people couldn't see it when they were in the 3D recording?
Well, when you have editing capabilities, you can select any of these objects in the room, and then there's a toggle switch on the simulation manager where the properties pane that allows you to make it visible or invisible. So as the instructor, you kind of have these great powers, Bill, like you had shown with ghost mode before, but you can also have something sitting in the room that the patient or the students don't see, that you can suddenly make available and visible to them at the appropriate moment or time, or that's only ever visible to yourself. So if you want some checklists or notes that are available to you so that you're walking your students through some very specific steps, they can be visible to you, but that are not visible to the students.
Yeah, and it's that easy. It's a toggle switch. And that's it.
Yep.
You just toggle it visible, toggle it invisible. That's it. And it's done. You find it, you click on it, right? You go into edit mode, you click on it, it turns yellow, so you know which one you're dealing with. And then you just hit invisible, and that's it. And then
that's it.
It's done.
Yep. And you can still see it as the instructor or the administrator, but the students who come in guest mode don't see it at all.
Yep.
And again, this is a totally scratch-built room. Started just with the room, brought in our models, brought in the image viewers with the documents and the images on them, made my recordings, and voila, here we are. Right. And this room is evergreen, able to be used as long as the content is viable.
Yeah, and this is one of the classrooms that we built, that Madison College built. We use it for our disability resources, personnel, our staff in disability resources. And they use it as an area to just kind of talk about the do's and the don'ts when it comes to helping students who have, accommodations that they need to have fulfilled.
Mhm.
So like like seeing all this in here, it's like, hey, where's oh wait, yeah, that's right. And never mind, this isn't that room. Right. And then you can duplicate all of this again, right? And you can then say, you just duplicate this scene, make this scene and rename it something else. And then you can come in here and you can move things around, you can put new things in,
Yep.
you can change it all up. If you like the layout, because I love this layout where it's, you have the videos or the pictures and stuff up here. And so now you can put a new picture in there. So maybe you're talking about a pediatric assessment, you want to
Sure.
put the upside down pediatric triangle there or something like that, right? So now
Mhm.
you can just change that out and have all these different rooms lined up where you can just go from one scene to another scene to another scene and bring the students, from one scene to another. So
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Bill, because in the back of the room, actually right behind where we came in,
oh yeah, there you
you
go.
see our scene navigation board. And so the idea was that we would take them from the classroom out to a field burn site, right, where there's a burn victim, to the burn care ICU, to the burn care debrief. And so you can go across all these different levels or areas of care. And this is one of those things that you would never be able to do, right, in a sim lab. But we can go from the classroom, and if I click on field burn site, right, we'll jump right from the classroom into a totally different world, right, a totally different space. And land out here. And now here we are in the field, right? I used our wooded area, and I brought a tents in, and here's our victim, right? And now it's like, and over here's our objectives. So we just studied this, right? Assess the body surface area with rule of nines, look at the degree of burn, and let's stabilize this person in the field.
And you did that, Rick. Did you do that with the 3D drawing tools on his
With
leg
the
there?
pen.
That's awesome. So you could essentially then go in here and go, you know what? I'm going to erase this and I want to put it now on his left arm.
Yep.
And it's that easy to just go, just like you're drawing on him. Or maybe it didn't get the lower leg, and so you just want to take that portion off and have them calculate a rule of nines. Yeah, that's, that's the customizability. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and we have these environments to use to do it, right? So we can jump from the classroom out to the woods, right? We can do our lesson here.
Yep.
And then after we've stabilized them, well, let's go to the next level of care. And now he's, in the ICU or the OR.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's talk about that he's got to have an escharotomy.
Yep.
And now we have different equipment, we have different objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the whole discussion about, okay, now what are we going to do, right?
Yep. And
So
you as the instructor can pick up the drawing tools and show people and say, okay, this is the area we're going to start our incision. This is how deep we want to make this incision. This is, you want to go lengthwise and not widthwise and those kind of things. Yeah.
We have our escharotomy incision lines up there on the wall, and I can say, okay, we're going to go right down the leg here.
There you go.
Right down and up the foot. And we can say, hey, we need to manage fluid, we need an IV, we need a Foley, he's going to need oxygen, and all that can be here in the room, ready to be brought to bear.
Yeah, and this is the OR with
Mhm.
some stuff removed. That's all it is.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and again, this was a mock-up, so I could walk them through the possibilities, just like we're doing here,
Yeah.
and say, this is what you're trying to teach. Let's talk about how we might be able to do that in here.
Yeah.
And then, so we've gone from the classroom to the field to the OR, and now we'll jump to our last scene, which is our debrief. And this is a very simple area, right? This is, okay, now we're just talking about what worked and what did we
Yeah.
understand and what didn't we understand. And we have kind of the anatomical models here. And
Yeah.
this is just your discussion area, right? I mean,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I can even get into the idea of fluid shift if I'm talking about this vascular system over here,
Mhm.
and helping my students understand why the fluid shifts, why we're talking about, a loss of blood pressure because all of the fluid has now, he was burned along that right leg. And so
Mhm.
now we've got a lot of that fluid going into the right leg and causing all of that swelling. And that was the reason we had to do the escharotomy. And then, we're saying, okay, how much blood pressure, look at this guy's body, right? And look at
Mhm.
how big his left leg is compared to the rest of or his right leg, excuse me, how big that is
Mhm.
compared to the rest of his body. Why do you think his blood pressure dropped as much as it did, right? Because of
Mhm.
that whole area, we started to see a massive amount of fluid shift. We can talk about potassium shift too. We can talk about what effects that might have on the nervous system. If we're talking about burns that are all the way down to the bone, we can look at the bone.
Mhm.
We can look inside the bone and see, hey, here's the marrow, right?
Mhm.
Inside of that, you can make this this skeleton bigger and then sort of
Mhm.
take a look even inside the bone. So we can talk about muscle loss, muscle damage, what areas of the muscle have been
Yep.
damaged, those kind of things, and what even the potential future is for this patient. Like
Mhm.
what's his future in terms of how much
Rehabilitation
function do
and
we think
function.
he's going to regain? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like it because you can really go into depth with it. So
Yep. I mean, it's so much fun. I love getting in here and working in Acadicus because
yeah,
it's like limits of your imagination is all that you're pretty much restricted to. And
yeah,
so you really can bring your creativity to bear as you're looking to teach almost, any kind of objective that you want to get at with your student.
and just sort of a fun thing here. I believe, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This might have changed a little bit, but this is the first place I got to see when I first went in the headset. Like
Yeah, I think
the
it
very
was.
first
Yep,
time.
the forum. Yep.
Yeah, very first time, 5 years ago. This is where I was at, and there was a big heart in there at that point. So
Yeah, it speaks to the how sticky learning is in an immersive environment when you have those place associations, even though
yep,
it's been several years since you've been here, you still remember, this is the first time you were here in this environment. You have that association with the place.
yep, and it's been going on 5 years. My memory is not anywhere near what it used to be. But yeah, I absolutely remember that. And I even remember some of the discussions that we had. I certainly remember going, okay, I'll take it. Let's go right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know we're getting towards the top of the hour. We haven't heard from Johnny. I don't know if we want to kind of take
Johnny
a
has
break.
one question. Johnny was asking if we have anesthesia, and we have anesthesia equipment that was sponsored by GE Healthcare. And I know there was some interest in building some anesthesia training from several of our customer partners, but we have not yet built anything that I'm aware of in terms of step-by-step anesthesia. Always a possibility.
Yep. We love doing custom work. So
Good to know. Thank you.
Now I do have a question. Rick, is that a Meta Pro?
this is the Quest Pro. Yes. I'm
Quest Pro.
using
Yeah, I
that.
thought so. Okay. That was my only other question. How yeah, and obviously are you quest casting or are you hardwired?
I'm wired.
You're
Yep.
wired. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
And I wanted to share, this is the 10-year anniversary of Arch Virtual. And I've got here the very first Oculus Rift DK1 developer kit. This is the Kickstarter.
Man.
10 years ago we got this, and that's when Candy and I decided to start. We were using this in our architectural practice, and we were sharing everything that we were building online. And so we attracted the attention of some pretty high profile customers, and we had the opportunity to do NBA arenas and subsurface data visualization for oil and gas and automotive. And Frank Gehry, the world famous architect, had this very headset on when I introduced him to VR out in California. And and the rest is history. We started Arch Virtual. We had a lot of great experience building all kinds of different applications, but it became very evident early on that medical simulation had the most pain points that were most closely aligned with the capabilities of VR, and potentially the greatest need given the shortage of clinicians that we were seeing already 5 years ago, which have now obviously reached a fever pitch. It's getting even worse at this point. So we're glad that we went into the medical space. This was 7 years ago at this point that we started getting into medical simulation. First in a long bone fracture we did that was used at a workshop at Johns Hopkins University. And then we did the Airway Lab project for Adtalem Global Education. And that's when we brought the VR headset to IMSH in 2018, the world's largest medical simulation conference. And it was incredibly well received. Our very first application won Best in Show, and we were like, this is where we want to be. And as we got to understand how powerful mannequin-based simulation was, we recognized that there was a lot of opportunity to really bring this into the virtual world. And I also want to share, this is the first hand tracking that we had. This was from HTC Vive. They were the first ones to have hand controls. Oculus was not the first. HTC was, and everybody got the HTC Vive, and you had to have lighthouse stations like you do today if you use a Vive Pro. I think some of those headsets still require those lighthouse stations, but they called this guy Mr. Hat. And this was the prototype hand controllers. And this was magical. The first time, I think this is probably about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, probably 8 years ago. When you put the headset on and you move your hands and it tracks your hands, that was the first time we had ever seen that. Before that, we were using Xbox controllers.
Yep.
So this was a revolution, and it was pretty incredible. So.
Yeah, I even had an interesting a few days ago. I had an interesting how big the Acadicus family is moment. My son was invited to a birthday party, and he didn't tell me about it until like the day before, like all of our kids do. And then I was like, yeah, okay, we'll try to get you to it. And I was out of town. I was in Fort Atkinson doing a VR demonstration over there on this. It was a Saturday, and my wife said, she texted me and said, hey, the person who is the dad of the boy who's having the birthday says that he knows Jon from Acadicus. And I was like, okay, what's his name? And she said, Brian. I said, okay, well, what's his last name? She said, I don't know. Like, okay, all right, fine. So when Brian was bringing my son back they went out and did mini golf and stuff. He came up and he started talking about, Acadicus and all of that. And we talked, and he told me his last name it's Pelletier. Is that the way you pronounce it?
Pelletier, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, he goes, oh yeah, I've known Jon for years. And, I was at his, we went to the Halloween party, and I'm like, oh, I missed it. It's like, that was just evidence like how small the world is, but how big the Acadicus family is. It's pretty cool.
Brian is an incredibly innovative creative director. He was at the core of a lot of our early projects and was the creative director for the Airway project that we did for Adtalem Global Education, and was introduced through Dr. Eric Bauman, who was the sponsor of that project at Adtalem. And he introduced us to Brian, and we had the opportunity to work with him on all kinds of really interesting things. I mean, it was 8 years ago we were using you know, through Brian's direction, motion captured surgeons that were walking into the room and teaching you how to do things. And we were doing photogrammetry of actual patients that we hired, like actors that we had come in, and we did photogrammetry scans of their actual bodies to use in the VR. And this was very early days, you know, 7, 8 years ago. So yeah, Brian was at the core. Brian and Dr. Bauman, both very innovative technology innovators for sure.
We stood around for probably about an hour talking, you know, just like, you know,
Yeah,
he's
Brian's
like,
great. Yeah.
he's like, wait, when did you come on? When did you start working with Acadicus? And I was like, oh, well, the end of 2019. And he's like, oh, that was about the time I was doing something else. And yeah, it was neat. It was really
You would
cool.
have just missed each other. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. It was perfect too, because our kids got time to play. So they're over there, you know, playing and having a good time in the backyard. And yeah. So that was really cool.
Well, we're definitely at the top of the hour. Johnny, thank you for hanging with us the whole time. If there's any questions you have for us or anything we can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Glad to talk with you about any interest that you might have.
All right. Thanks, guys. Always love keeping up.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Everybody have a
Take
great
care.
weekend.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye-bye.